Okay, so I found these notes. I'm going to try to do this in one take. Here we go. So this is the notes for photosynthesis, the light and dark reactions. You should be able to answer the following questions once we finish this. So the first question you should be able to answer is, how is light used to create ATP and ADPH? And this next question you should be able to answer is, how are sugars made using products from the light reaction? So here are some vocabulary that you need to know. You need to know what a photosystem is. Photosystem has two parts. There's a light harvesting complex, which is a bunch of pigments that surround and transfer energy to the reaction center complex in the middle. A reaction center complex has two special chlorophyll that can release an electron. Pigments are molecules that can absorb and reflect light. Chlorophyll is a green pigment found in plants. It absorbs all colors except green. NADPH is another type of electron carrier. They hold high energy electrons. The photoelectric effect is where electrons gain energy by absorbing light. So an example, the electrons on a fork, when you give it microwave, which is a type of light, they absorb energy and they start jumping around, which is why you see lightning sparks. Please do not put metal in your microwaves because of that. Chlorophyll, when it gets light, the energy will be transferred over to the electrons, which will cause them to leave the pigment. Photosynthesis is using sunlight energy to make sugar from CO2. The Calvin cycle is a series of chemical reactions that makes pieces of sugar from CO2. All right, so let's talk about the photosystems. There are two photosystems. Photosystem 2 is actually first, but was found second. So that's why it's called photosystem 2. It rips electrons away from water and it makes oxygen. It sends electrons to the ETC, the electron transport chain. Photosystem 1 is technically second, but was found first, so that's why it's called photosystem 1. It obtains used up electrons from the ETC and makes NADPH. Energy electrons are actually taken away to the NADPH to the Calvin cycle. Here is our photosystem 2. So we have the light harvesting complex and the reaction center complex with the two special chlorophylls in the middle. When light is absorbed, the pigments transfer the energy to the reaction center, and then pew, that electron goes flying. Or it doesn't have to hit the other pigments, it can hit the main pigment directly in the center, and pew, that high energy electron starts going out. So let's go with the light reactions. It needs light and water. It happens in the thylakoid membranes. It uses the ETC, and it makes NADPH, ATP, and oxygen, which is important for us. So here is photosystem 2. Sunlight hits it, pew, sends that high energy electron to that ETC. The electron transport chain will use that energy to move hydrogens from one side of a membrane to the other. So now it moves the hydrogens from one side to the other. And then once it's done, it exits the ETC and joins photosystem 1. This repeats again. So high energy electrons released, goes to the ETC, and then starts kicking out some of those hydrogens to the other side. And then that electron that's used up of energy ends up going to photosystem 1. And then we got to replace those electrons that we kicked out. So here comes water, and it gets ripped apart, releasing two electrons and two hydrogens, and that oxygen atom will join another oxygen to make O2, which is what we breathe. So there they are. They replace the electrons that got kicked out. Okay, so now we have ATP synthase is how we make ATP. So we kept pushing all those hydrogens to one side, creating a gradient. They want to go from high to low. So ATP synthase lets them do that. They are allowed to exit through this way. However, they get to do a little work before they go, sort of kind of like a hydro dam or a water wheel. So let's get some ADP joins there. And then as the hydrogen atoms exit, actually takes 3 total. They go through this, they rotate the wheel, or they charge ADP, which makes it eventually ATP, an energy molecule. And that is then sent to the dark reactions. So that's how ATP synthase works. Let's talk about photosystem 1. So those electrons that are in photosystem 1 will also get hit by light, and then pew, they will go join NADPH. And so here we go, pew, and now it's part of NADPH, and we will replace those with the ones from ETC, which have already been used. So this all happens in the chloroplast. We zoom in, and we have the stroma, the thylakoids, the outer membrane, the inner membrane, and this happens in the thylakoid membranes. So let's recap the whole thing by zooming into the thylakoids here. So we have photosystem 2. The light causes photosystem to release high energy electrons, which go into the ETC. That ETC, the electron transport chain, moves the hydrogens from one side to the other. Those used up electrons will now go join photosystem 1, where they'll get hit by light and they'll be used to make NADPH. And then finally, all those hydrogens that were pumped from one side to the other need to escape because they want to go from a high concentration to a low concentration, and that ends up making ATP for us. So now you should be able to answer the question, how is light used to create ATP and ADPH? Dark reactions. So dark reactions don't need light. They're the Calvin cycle and stroma, and they require ATP and ADPH from the light reactions and also CO2 from the atmosphere. They are located in the stroma, so we zoom into the chloroplast. So instead of happening in the thylakoid membrane, it's going to happen in that space between the thylakoids. The Calvin cycle needs 3 CO2 molecules that we get from the atmosphere. They will enter the Calvin cycle. We will use the energy from ATP. We got that energy from the light reactions. Then we'll have NADPH come in to give us some high energy electrons. Those were from photosystem 1 in the light reactions. All that stuff will be used to turn the 3CO2, the energy from ATP and those high energy electrons, along with other molecules from the Calvin cycle, will be used to make some sugar pieces. We can actually call them just sugar at this point. So here is a recap with CO2 going to the Calvin cycle, ATP from the light reactions using ATP synthase in photosystem 2, along with the ATC, and then NADPH from the light reactions from photosystem 1 will be used to make those sugar pieces. And now you should be able to answer, how are sugars made using products from the light reactions? So hopefully that was helpful to you, and good luck on your quiz.